Waitress's generous act at 3 a.m. leads to a shocking revelation. Billionaire investor revealed. It was one of those ghostly nights when the clock struck 3, and shadows whispered secrets in the corners of the deserted diner. The flickering neon sign outside buzzed like a restless heart, illuminating the faces of those few brave enough to seek solace in the early hours. Among them was Clara, a waitress with an uncanny intuition. Her eyes gleamed with a knowing that suggested she held the weight of hidden stories. Tonight, however, the unthinkable happened. A scruffy man in a dark trench coat absorbed her attention. A lone figure hunched over a table, scribbling furiously in a notebook. Who was he? What was he writing? Her heart raced with curiosity as the aroma of stale coffee wrapped around her like a cloak. Then it struck her. The man hadn't touched his food, not even a sip of water. Clara's gut twisted. Something was deeply off. Surely, she had seen him before. He looked familiar, but his presence was suffused with an air of mystery that sent shivers racing down her spine. The silence of the diner felt heavy, each tick of the clock resonating like a drumbeat in her ears. A tingle of fear danced through her veins as she approached the man's table, her hands trembling slightly as she offered a warm smile. "Hey there, can I get you something? You look like you could use a boost." His gaze locked onto hers, piercing through her like a needle. As they spoke, Clara noticed peculiar details. His fingers, stained with ink, trembled slightly. He wasn't just a writer, he was a creator of secrets. There was a tension in the air, and it clung to her like a fog. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, a sudden commotion erupted at the entrance. The door swung open, and in strode a tall woman, her hair cascading like fire. The instant she stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted, thickening as if the air held its breath. The woman, eyes darting around, called out, "Where is he?" Before Clara could even process the chaos, her heart lurched. This wasn't just an ordinary night, it was a tangled web of fates intertwining, filled with questions that begged for answers. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The tension mounted as Clara's pulse quickened. The woman glanced in Clara's direction, her expression a mix of concern and urgency. "Have you seen him?" The words pounded in Clara's chest, igniting a flame of curiosity so fierce she could hardly suppress it. The mystery deepened. Who were they searching for? What had she stumbled into at this late hour? As the woman moved closer, Clara felt a jolt of recognition. Memories flashed like lightning. The man from the table now just a shadow in her mind. A chill raced through her. Who was he really, and what secrets did he hold? With suspense crackling in the air, Clara knew one thing for sure: she had to unravel this puzzle before the night slipped away. Something monumental was about to unfold. Clara's heart raced, pounding against her ribcage like a frantic bird desperate to escape. The woman's gaze bore into her, demanding answers Clara wasn't sure she had. I don't know who you're looking for," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman's urgency unnerved her. Every instinct screamed for Clara to retreat, yet curiosity clenched tighter than any fear. "Look," the woman said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial tone. "There's no time. I need to find Paul. He's in danger." The name hit Clara like a punch to the gut. Paul. She had heard that name echoed in hushed conversations before, whispers of a man who had disappeared from local circles, a figure rumored to hold secrets that could shake powerful empires. Clara glanced back at the man in the trench coat. Hadn't he mentioned Paul earlier? He was scribbling while the world moved around him as though it were a passing shadow. A sense of dread coated her throat like ash. He was just here, Clara managed to say, her pulse quickening as she thought of the links connecting them all. Yes. Before she could finish, the woman's eyes darted towards the back exit. We need to find him now. The panic in her voice was palpable, stirring the air with electricity. Clara took a step toward the woman, drawn in by the gravity of the situation. What is going on? Why do you think he's in danger? Time's running out, the woman pleaded. They're coming for him. If you know anything. The door swung open once more with a violent rush, a chilling wind sweeping through the diner. Clara spun around, holding her breath. Two men in suits strode inside, their expressions cold and determined, the kind of look that sent shivers flooding through her spine. She could almost feel the tension crackling in the room. The suited men scanned the diner, hunting for someone, their eyes narrowing as they approached. Where is he? One man barked, his voice sharp like a knife. Clara's mind raced as she realized they were looking for the same person. They can't know we're here, the woman hissed, pulling Clara close. If they find him first. It felt as though time hung suspended in the air, dragging out each moment like a drawn-out breath. Clara locked eyes with the woman, and in that silent exchange, they understood they were in this together. The diner suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. Clara's pulse thrummed in her ears, drowning out the hum of the flickering sign outside. He was here. I can't let them find him. She glanced back at the man, but he clutched the notebook as if it were his lifeline, completely engrossed in whatever thoughts were spilling out of his mind. Just then, the man abruptly stood, his chair scraping against the tiled floor, sending a ripple of surprise through the diner. He turned, eyes wide and filled with fear, as he spotted the approaching suits. No. You can't. Clara's breath hitched. She knew she should flee, but everything inside her urged her to stay, to protect him, whatever danger lay ahead. Just as the men approached, she rushed forward. Wait. You can't take him. She shouted, heart pounding like a war drum. The woman beside her grabbed her arm fiercely. What are you doing? In that heartbeat, the world shifted, the weight of choices and consequences crashing over Clara. The confrontation was unavoidable. But what she didn't know was just how perilous this moment would soon become, pushing her into a vortex of secrets far darker than she had imagined. The air grew dense, filled with tension and dread as the men's expressions hardened. One of them smirked, revealing a hidden malice that sent chills down Clara's spine. You don't know who you're dealing with, do you? As the shadows thickened around them, Clara faced the crossroads of fate. In the pulse of that night, secrets begged to unravel, and every heartbeat brought her closer to an explosive revelation. What secrets lay hidden in the depths of that notebook? Who was Paul really, and could she protect him from these looming threats? As Clara stood there, heart racing, she felt the pull of danger. Everything balanced on the edge of uncertainty. Clara felt the weight of the tension in the air, thick enough to choke on. The two men in suits loomed closer, their expressions cold and hostile. She glanced at the woman beside her. The urgency in the woman's eyes was unmistakable. We have to get him out of here, Clara whispered. Her heart raced as she thrust her hand towards the man in the trench coat. You don't understand. He looked up, terror etched across his features. They can't take me. I can't let them. He took a step back, and without really thinking, Clara grabbed his wrist tightly. Stay with us, she urged, though her voice trembled as uncertainty washed over her. The suited men were almost upon them, their footsteps heavy on the diner's tile. Paul is right under their noses, the woman said, her voice low but quick. If we don't move now, it'll be too late. Clara's mind spun. Where would he be? Just before she could finish, the man in the trench coat jerked to the side, pointing as if the answer was written in the air. There. He had spotted the back exit, a glimmer of hope shining through the chaos, but then the first suited man spoke. You think you can just walk away? The men's voices cut through the diner, slicing the frayed threads of Clara's resolve. You're going to regret this. The woman pulled Clara and the man into a sudden dash towards the back of the diner. Clara could feel the panic in the air as she sprinted, her muscles aching and heart nearly bursting out of her chest. Each footfall echoed like a countdown, and she felt the stares of other patrons, their faces a mix of shock and horror. She didn't care. There was only one thing on her mind: get out. They reached the exit, and the woman pushed the door open just as the suited men barreled toward them. Outside, the night air met Clara's flushed face, cool and sharp like a blade. But she didn't stop. They rushed down an alleyway, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Now what? Clara wheezed, her mind racing. What does Paul have that they want? The man struggled to catch his breath as he leaned against a graffiti-smeared wall, his eyes darting alongside Clara's. I can't tell you much, but they think he's got something they need. Something powerful. Powerful? Clara repeated, the implications washing over her like a wave. What could that possibly be? The woman stepped closer, urgency buzzing in her every word. It's not just money. It's a key to something much bigger than we understand. They'll stop at nothing to get it. Then we have to warn him. Clara urged. He needs to go somewhere safe. The man peered down the alley, where shadows danced like phantoms. Safe? There's no safe place right now. They can track us, and if they find him, a sound echoed from the street, heavy footsteps, urgent voices. Clara felt her throat tighten again, the walls of the alley pressing in. She had no clear direction. The woman suddenly pushed forward, pointing. This way. We can hide in the old storage warehouse. There's a back entrance. They all dashed towards the old building, its crumbling facade looming ominously ahead. Clara's mind raced faster than her feet, questions circling like vultures. What did Paul know that put him in this position? Why had she gotten herself wrapped in this mess? As they reached the door, and the woman fumbled with the lock, Clara felt a chill wash over her. Would they make it? Would Paul be the downfall of everything she thought she knew? And then came a voice from behind, a chilling, smooth echo that felt just as sinister as it was familiar. You really thought you could slip away? Clara froze, recognition crashing over her with stark clarity. She knew that voice, but what if, right in that moment, everything she believed began to unravel? What lay ahead? And could she outrun not just danger but also the truth that seemed hell-bent on catching up with them? A tense silence followed the voice, a sharp contrast to the chaos outside the warehouse. Clara felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Panic surged through her like ice water, freezing her limbs. Clara, we have to move. The woman's voice was urgent, but Clara couldn't take her eyes off the dark figure now emerging from the shadows. That it was Aaron, a man she thought she knew, an old friend turned adversary. His suit was immaculate, but his smirk was anything but friendly. Didn't you get my message? He asked, voice dripping with sarcasm. You shouldn't have come here. Why are you doing this? Clara's voice cracked, each word bursting with disbelief and anger. You were supposed to help us. Help you? Aaron chuckled, the sound mocking. You should have stayed away. This is bigger than you and your naive ideals. The woman beside Clara nodded. He's one of them. A dead end, Clara, we can't trust him. Tension crackled in the air like static electricity. Clara's breath hitched as she felt a new wave of danger roll in. The suited men were somewhere close, and the weight of fear settled in her stomach. You think those guys in suits are the real problem? Aaron stepped closer, an unsettling gleam in his eyes. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Paul, they want him for a reason. He's a liability and a target. You'd do well to leave him behind. No. He's my friend. Clara shouted, her heart racing. I can't just abandon him. Aaron's smile faded for a brief moment, then morphed into something menacing. Friends don't get each other involved in things they can't comprehend. You're just another pawn, Clara. Clara felt a knot twist tighter in her chest. She had to think fast. The cold walls of the warehouse around them felt like they were closing in. "If you think I'm just going to stand here, listening to you, you're wrong," she gritted through clenched teeth. In one swift movement, Aaron lunged toward her, but the woman reacted faster. She grabbed Clara's arm and yanked her backward, just as a loud crash echoed through the door they had entered. Clara's heart pounded as both the woman and the man in the trench coat pushed her further back into the darkness of the warehouse. "We have to find a way to Paul," the woman hissed, urgency pouring from her. "He's in danger, and Aaron will sell us out at the first chance he gets." "Is he right?" Clara asked, desperation seeping into her voice. "Is Paul a liability? What does he really know?" "More than you can imagine," the man replied grimly. "It's not just a key. It's a secret they'll kill for, a secret that links to—" A second crash interrupted him, louder than the first. The door shuddered under a violent impact, and Clara saw shadows flood in. They were searching for them. "Move!" the woman shouted. "Nothing we say will matter if they find us." Clara glanced back at the darkened corner where Aaron lingered, his smug expression replaced by the steeliness she didn't expect. She couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, Aaron knew more about Paul and the true danger ahead than he was letting on. But there was no time to contemplate. Just as they found an old staircase leading further into the depths of the warehouse, the door burst open. Faces came into view, eyes cold and hungry. "Clara! We know you're in here." One of the suited men yelled, his voice gravelly and menacing. The sound echoed off the walls, overwhelming Clara's senses. "Go! Now!" the woman insisted, fear and defiance palpable in her tone. They sprinted up the stairs, heavy footsteps pounding after them, dread suffocating the air. Clara's heart raced faster, pounding against her ribs like a wild drum. They had only moments before their fate was sealed. As Clara reached the top, breathless and terrified, she caught a glimpse of shadows moving below. The realization sent chills down her spine. What were they really dealing with, and could they possibly escape the chaos still lurking in the shadows? Would they find Paul before it was too late? Clara stumbled into a dimly lit corridor at the top of the staircase, her pulse thrumming in her ears. The air was thick with dust and uncertainty, each breath a reminder of how precarious their situation had become. The woman pressed a hand to her arm as they sprinted down the hall, her grip firm and reassuring, yet laced with urgency. "Stay close," she whispered, urgency thick in her tone. "We need to find an exit." Clara barely nodded, her mind racing like a runaway train. The pounding footsteps behind them echoed ominously, growing closer with every heartbeat. She could feel the wall pressing against her back as they rounded a corner. There was no telling what lay ahead, but one thing was clear: stopping wasn't an option. "Who are those men?" Clara gasped between shallow breaths, fear twisting her insides. "They're not just anyone. They work for a private security firm, a firm with ties to powerful people who want Paul and whatever he is hiding," the woman replied, urgency palpable in her voice. "They won't hesitate to eliminate us if they get the chance. Why doesn't Aaron help us?" Clara's question came out in a rush, coded in point-blank confusion. "Because he is part of it. He is not just an old friend. He is their link to us," the woman shot back, eyes narrowed with determination. "He is playing both sides." Clara's head reeled. Aaron, the person she had once trusted, was now a threat. How had things fallen so far into chaos? As they reached another door, the woman flung it open. It led to a dusty room cluttered with old crates and debris. A faint light flickered from a small, grimy window. But before they could take a moment to collect themselves, a clang echoed behind them. They weren't alone. "Quick! Over there!" the woman urged, pointing toward a narrow space between two towering stacks of crates. They darted behind the crates just as a group of suited men poured through the door, their eyes scanning the room. Clara held her breath, every nerve in her body on high alert. She pulled her knees up to her chest, trying to make herself invisible. The men moved silently, as if they were predators in search of prey. "Split up," one of the men ordered. "Search every corner. They can't have gone far." Clara's heart sank further. They were tracking them. They were like hounds, and Clara felt like their quarry. "We need to get out of here," she whispered urgently, her voice barely escaping her lips. The woman nodded, her eyes darting around for any possible exits. They had to stay quiet, but Clara needed to know more. What do they want with Paul? Power, secrets, control. It's always the same. Whatever he's involved in, it's dangerous. They believe he knows something that could unravel their plans, she whispered back, her tone haunted. And if they get their hands on him, it's over. Suddenly, the men began to move closer to their hiding spot. Clara could almost feel the chill of their intent. Adrenaline coursed through her, but there was also a flicker of anger. Her friend was missing, and she was not about to let anyone control her fate, but just as one of the men reached for the crates near them, a loud crash erupted from the far end of the room. Clara's heart jumped. It was the kind of distraction they desperately needed. "Now!" the woman urged, darting out from their hiding spot and racing toward the door on the other side of the room. Clara followed, fear igniting her every step. They pushed through, leaving the noise behind them. As they staggered into an even wider corridor, they realized they were not free yet. There were more doors, more shadows lurking. Choices lay ahead, but could their chances of escape survive the chaos that followed? "Once we find Paul, we can turn the tables," the woman said, her eyes fixed ahead. But there was a dawning realization in Clara's mind. What if they couldn't find him? And what if Aaron betrayed them completely? As they pressed forward, a chilling thought gnawed at her. The stakes were rising, but could Clara face whatever awaited her in the dark? Could she trust the woman beside her? And was Paul truly the key they needed? The shadows were closing in, and the time for questions was running out. Clara moved swiftly, the shadows stretching around her like dark fingers eager to pull her back into uncertainty. Her legs felt heavy, but she pushed herself to run faster. Her mind was a whirlpool of dread and hope. They had to find Paul, and they had to do it soon. Which way? Clara squeaked, her throat tight, eyes wide with fear. "Down this hall." The woman's voice was sharp, cutting through the haze of panic. They turned sharply, keeping their footsteps light and muffled against the worn wooden floor. The dim corridor narrowed, and worry trickled in, making Clara hesitate for just a heartbeat. What if they were already too late? The corridor opened into a wide foyer, its high ceiling draped with cobwebs. Clusters of dusty chandeliers loomed like forgotten sentinels. Shadows shifted as her eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through thick grime on the windows. In the far corner, a door loomed, its rusty handle beckoned. "Let's check that door," the woman said, nodding toward it. There was no time to waste. As they crept toward the door, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed behind them. Clara's heart raced anew, pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The men were closing in again. She could feel her breath hitching, each inhale a struggle against the rising tide of fear. "Please hurry," Clara urged, glancing back, her stomach turning at the thought of being caught like prey. With a swift motion, the woman yanked open the door. They rushed inside, slamming it shut just as the footsteps surged into the foyer. Clara pressed against the door, her body rigid, listening. The clattering sounds of men's voices drifted in through the thin wooden barrier. "They must be gone in here. I heard them. Check the other doors." Another voice barked, and Clara realized they had only seconds before they were discovered. Inside the room, she took quick stock of their surroundings. It was filled with old furniture, torn curtains swaying slightly with the draft. A single, dusty window offered a sliver of light, illuminating the chaos around them. But there was something else, a poster peeling from the wall. It caught her eye, and she moved toward it. "Clara, we should," the woman began, but Clara wasn't listening. Her fingers brushed against the poster a grainy image of a man with dark hair and sharp features. "Is this him?" Clara whispered, recognizing the face. "Paul." The fear that had her frozen melted into something more potent, anger. "Yes. That's Paul," the woman said urgently. "But there's no time. We need to." "I'm done running," Clara interrupted, emotions swirling furiously within her. "I want to know why he was taken. They're after something he knows, and I need to know what it is." As if in reply, the door rattled under a violent force from the outside. The men were coming. They had to act quickly. "Think, Clara. There must be another way out of here," the woman pressed, desperation coloring her voice. "We can't let them capture us. There." Clara pointed to a trapdoor in the corner of the room. "We can escape through there." Before the woman could respond, Clara lunged for the door, wrenching it open and revealing a dark tunnel spiraling down into the unknown. "Are you crazy?" the woman gasped. "There's no other choice." Clara insisted, urgency fueling her every word. Just as she grabbed the edge of the doorframe, another crash echoed against the main door. It splintered, turning any notion of retreat into a ticking clock. They were running out of time. "We go down," Clara shouted, and without waiting for another moment, she dove into the abyss, trusting instinct over fear. They slid down, the darkness enveloping them. Clara squeezed her eyes shut, not knowing what lay ahead. But as they hit the bottom, a chill slithered through her spine. The tunnel was more than just an escape route, it felt like the entrance to something much darker. "What if we're heading right into their trap?" the woman murmured, fear edging her voice. Clara had no answer. They only had each other and a flickering hope that somewhere in this chaos, the truth was waiting. But would they be ready for what they uncovered? In the dark depths below, peril loomed, and the stakes were only beginning to rise. What waited for them could redefine everything they knew about loyalty, trust, and survival. As they stood on the precipice of the unknown, Clara asked herself one final question: was she ready to confront the truth, no matter how devastating? And the whispers grew louder, urging them forward. What lay ahead could change their lives forever. What if everything she believed was simply a facade? The tunnel closed in around them, a narrow shaft that echoed with the sound of their quickened breaths. Clara shivered again, the cold clammy air wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. She could feel the weight of dark secrets pressing down, threatening to bury her alive. "Clara, are you sure about this?" the woman's voice trembled, panic spilling over the edges. Clara turned to her, the dim light barely piercing the gloom. "I have to know what they wanted from him," Clara said, her voice firm despite the dread creeping into her heart. "He wouldn't just disappear without a reason." Before she could argue further, a faint light flickered ahead. A shaft of golden brightness beckoned them from deeper within the tunnel. Clara exchanged a glance with the woman. They had no choice but to move forward. As they crept forward, shadows danced along the walls, growing larger with every step. Clara's mind whirled with questions about Paul, the men hunting them, and the ominous silence that threatened to swallow them whole. The passage widened, transforming into a cavern where the light coalesced into a small circle around a simple wooden table. At its center lay a stack of documents, their edges frayed and worn. Clara's pulse quickened. This was no random room. This was a meeting place, the heart of the conspiracy. "Look," she whispered, pointing to the papers. They sidled closer, the sharp edges of fear tightening around Clara's chest. The words jumped off the pages: cryptic notes, a map, strange symbols. And there, at the top of the pile, a photograph. Its contents sent a jolt of recognition straight through Clara. "Is that?" the woman stammered, eyes wide. "Paul," Clara confirmed, her heart sinking. "But it's more than that. They're tracking him, tracking us." The documents discussed rendezvous points and secret exchanges. Clara's blood ran cold as she pieced it together. They weren't just after Paul, they were after something he had uncovered. Something dangerous. Suddenly, the sound of distant footsteps echoed through the tunnel, the thuds growing closer, more aggressive. Clara's heart raced anew. "Hide!" she hissed, looking around frantically. The cavern had no obvious exits, but there was a low shelf running along the wall, and she gestured for the woman to crouch beside it. Clara's mind raced. She could sense the men closing in, could almost feel their predatory energy devouring the space around her. She pressed her back against the cool stone, her eyes darting to the flickering shadows that danced closer and closer. As the footsteps grew louder, the light from the tunnel flickered, then dimmed. Clara's breath hitched. They were almost upon them. She could see the silhouettes of men striding toward the room, their figures straight and formidable like sentinels of doom. "Stay quiet," she whispered, a tense lump forming in her throat. The woman nodded, but her eyes brimmed with fear. Clara watched, heart in her throat. The men crowded around the table, their voices a low rumble. One of them, a tall figure with a sharp jaw, leaned forward, examining the documents. Clara held her breath, barely daring to blink. "They're onto something serious," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "We can't let them get away. Find them before it's too late." Her heart sank. They weren't just hunting for Paul, they were hunting for something that could change everything. Clara's mind whirled as the men began to fan out, one moving closer to their hiding spot. The woman beside her was trembling, fear radiating in waves. "Clara," she whispered, and Clara could see the panic in her eyes. This was it. If they stayed, they would be discovered. But if they moved, they might alert the men that they were too close. Clara weighed her options, her mind racing against the countdown of time. As the man lingered just a few feet away, Clara's instinct kicked in. She had to push through the fear. "Run," she whispered, determination hardening her voice. With one last glance at the room filled with secrets, Clara bolted toward a dark opening at the far corner of the cavern, her adrenaline roaring to life. She could hear the woman's footsteps behind her, pounding against the stone. They plunged into the next darkness, the ominous shouts of the men echoing behind them. As they dashed deeper into the labyrinth, Clara realized the truth was still ahead, waiting to ensnare them in ways she couldn't yet fathom, but one thing was certain, whatever they uncovered wouldn't just threaten them. It would unravel everything they thought they knew about loyalty and betrayal. What awaited them in the depths could either save them or swallow them whole. Would they find Paul, or would they become the next victims caught in this dark web? The darkness engulfed them, but Clara pushed herself to move faster. The sound of her own heart pounding in her ears drowned out the echoes of their pursuers, but she dared not stop or look back. The woman followed closely, breathing heavily, fear the sharp edge of every gasp. They turned corners, slipping through narrow passages that twisted like a snake. Clara's mind churned. What did Paul uncover? Why was it so important? The thought fired her determination as she pushed against the wet walls, feeling the jagged stones scrape her skin. "Where are we going?" the woman panted, uncertainty lacing her voice. "Anywhere but here." Clara shot back. The flickering torchlight from their earlier hiding spot faded into a distant memory. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the air felt, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else she couldn't identify, a metallic tang. A sudden sound made her freeze, voices low and urgent echoing through the passage behind them. Clara's heart lurched. They had to find a way to evade capture, but each route seemed to conspire against them. Desperation clawed at her throat. If they didn't find safety soon, they would be trapped like animals. Then, she spotted a sliver of light spilling from a crevice ahead. Heart racing, Clara charged toward it, hope reigniting. They wriggled through the narrow space and emerged in a smaller chamber, bearing the remnants of past lives: a tattered armchair, cracked frames on the walls, and dust-covered trinkets that seemed to tell stories of abandonment. "Do you think we lost them?" the woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Clara replied, instinctively scanning the shadows for any signs of movement. Just then, rustling came from behind them, a sign that the men were moving through the tunnels. The ticking clock in Clara's mind pushed her forward. "Look," Clara said, pointing to a doorway partially hidden behind a rotting curtain. They crept toward it, hearts pounding with every small sound. Once safely through, they pressed their backs against the door, listening. The voices grew louder, clearer. She caught a snippet of conversation that froze her in place. "He won't lead us to it willingly. We need leverage. Maybe lure them with a fake lead. Put some pressure on them." Another voice suggested coldly. "Or use that girl." Clara blanched. They were talking about her name spoken like a tool, a pawn in a game she wanted no part of. Her breath hitched. They knew where she was. This was a mistake, the woman beside her said, her voice trembling, fear rising in her tone. "Wait," Clara said, a thought sparking within the chaos. "If they think we're hiding here, they might check back at the cavern. That means they'll send someone back to look for us." The woman's breath stuttered, but Clara pressed on, her thoughts racing. "We can use that. We can lead them into a trap. What do you have in mind?" Clara hesitated, fear for their lives battling the courage building within her. "We could create distractions, but we need to split up." The woman's eyes widened. "No. It's too dangerous. Listen. One of us needs to keep their attention while the other goes for help. We can't just wait to be caught." Taking a moment to think through all possible scenarios, Clara felt a flicker of urgency mixed with dread. She hated the thought of leaving her companion behind, but they had to take a risk. "I'll create the distraction," the woman said, shaking her head resolutely. "You go." "Wait," Clara tried to protest, but the woman held up a hand. "I can do this. Just promise me you won't wait too long. You find Paul, and you both get out." Clara could only nod, the aching lump returning in her throat. The weight of the decision pressed on her. They shared one last look, a silent acknowledgement of the danger ahead. Before she knew it, the woman slipped out, moving through shadows as if she were part of them, ready to draw attention away from Clara. Alone now, Clara felt the gravity of her choice. Time was slipping away. She needed to act. As moments passed like hours, she heard the approaching footsteps again. This was it. The murmur of voices grew closer. They would soon be here, the stakes couldn't be higher. With her heart pounding, Clara prepared herself to face whatever lay on the other side of that doorway. Would she find Paul's trail, or would she become another name whispered in the darkness? Clara took a deep breath as everything coalesced into a singular moment of purpose. She gathered her courage, eyes fixed on the ominous opening of the doorway ahead that promised both answers and danger. But as she stepped forward, gripping the splintered handle, Clara heard a low growl from the shadows, a chilling reminder that not everything in the tunnels was human. What awaited her was far deeper than she had ever anticipated. The growl echoed softly, but Clara felt it reverberate deep in her bones, sending a wave of fear surging through her. Heart racing, she stepped back, her mind racing with possibilities. What could be lurking just beyond the door? As she held her breath, eyes wide, the shadows seemed to thicken around her, palpable and lurking as she strained to listen. The growl came again, closer this time, sharper. Panic surged through her, the conversation from moments before twisted in her mind. The voices of those men felt like a distant memory now, overshadowed by the new threat lurking in the dim light. She glanced back toward the curtain that led to her only chance for survival. If she stepped through that doorway, would she walk into danger or opportunity? Clara's instincts shouted at her to run, to escape deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels, but the thought of being caught alone in the dark urged her toward the doorway. Just then, the sounds of footsteps filled the air, multiple pairs marching through the passage she had just fled. They were here. Without thinking, Clara bolted into the room adjacent to the doorway. It was cramped, filled with the remnants of decayed discarded furniture and remnants of lives once lived. She crouched low, heart thundering in her chest, sneaking a glance through the thin veil that hung between her and whatever waited beyond. That a figure moved into view, backlit by the flickering light of distant torches. They were men, tall and menacing, eyes scanning the room with a ruthless efficiency that sent shivers down her spine. Clara held her breath, every instinct telling her to silence her racing heart. Their voices dripped with malicious intent as they debated, oblivious to her presence. "We don't have much time. We need to find her before she contacts Paul," one man said, his tone tight with urgency. The other nodded, gripping a flashlight that swept across the room. Clara ducked down further, praying the shadows would cloak her from view. She could feel dread creeping up her spine like ice-cold fingers. They were hunting her not just as prey but for information. But what information? Just then, she recalled Paul's frantic warning. There were things he had discovered, things that put them all in danger. The hints he'd dropped tickled the back of her mind, igniting a flicker of clarity amid the chaos. If they were after her for what Paul knew, then maybe he was in even greater danger than she'd realized. Suddenly, another noise broke the tension. An explosion of noise came from the other side, the sound of something heavy crashing to the ground. Clara's heart raced. Was it the woman who had distracted the men? Panic surged in her chest as she reached for her phone, her only source of hope. She had to contact Paul if he knew they were searching for her, maybe he could help. But the light fell upon her hiding spot, and she could feel it, an urgent, inescapable danger closing in. The men had heard the crash, turning their heads toward the noise with sinister curiosity. "Did you hear that?" "We should check," one of them said, stepping closer to Clara's hiding place. She froze, breath hitching in her throat. If they found her now, if they decided to look in this room, there'd be no second chance. She needed to act. The weight of the decision crushed her. With a jolt, Clara chose to bolt for the other side of the room, praying instinct would guide her as she avoided the beam of light. Terror took control, each moment stretching painfully as she pressed against the wall, pushing deeper into the shadows. But before she could fully escape, a strong hand closed around her wrist, pulling her back into the light. She gasped, fear pouring into her veins as she locked eyes with the men who had hunted her this far. "What do we have here?" "A little rat caught in a trap," one of them sneered. The world tilted dangerously around her, heart pounding in her ears. This was it. Clara couldn't let the darkness pull her under. She fought against the grip, adrenaline surging. And just when she thought she would be lost, the sound of footsteps thundered from the corridor, heavy boots marching toward them. "Move!" someone shouted, and as the door swung open, chaos erupted. In the whirlwind of sounds and shouts, Clara saw her chance. Taking a deep breath, she wrenched free and darted toward the door, heart pumping. All she could think about was escaping to warn Paul, to uncover the truth before it swallowed her whole. But in the chaos, she overheard a whispered name fade into the air, a chilling truth wrapping around her like a tightening noose. Clara, she's the key, and as she slipped through the doorway, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching her, plotting. What deeper web was she now entangled in, and who would emerge from the shadows in pursuit? With every step, Clara felt the weight of her discovery, the understanding that her fight was far from over. The hunt had only just begun. Clara ran through the dimly lit corridor, heart hammering like a drum in her ears. She could still hear the shouts and commotion behind her. It was chaos. Every instinct screamed for her to keep moving, to escape the predatory pursuit that seemed to linger just behind her. She thought of Paul and the woman who had shown her the way, every choice pulling her deeper into an unknown fate. Suddenly, she stumbled into a large room, its vastness swallowing her little form whole. Dust motes danced in patches of light streaming through cracks in the walls, illuminating what looked like an abandoned processing facility. Old machinery lay scattered, serving as ghosts of a forgotten past. The air felt stagnant, holding whispers of secrets yet untold. Then Clara heard them, footsteps closer than she had anticipated. She felt a chilling grip of fear twist in her gut as she ducked to the side, hiding behind a wall of rusted steel. Breathing just shallow enough to remain unseen, she pressed her back against the cold metal, straining to listen to the voices echoing through the chamber. "Keep searching. She can't have gone far." A man barked, the urgency in his voice slicing through her. Clara's eyes darted around, looking for an escape route. Clara took a breath, pushing her legs to run again as adrenaline coursed through her veins. She spotted a door across the vast room marked with an old peeling sign, "Emergency Exit." Inspiration flickered as she sprinted toward it. But as she reached the handle, something stopped her cold. The woman, the one that had risked everything for her, had fallen back into danger. Aaron's figure slipped into her mind, his face twisted in machinations. Clara had to warn Paul, she couldn't leave either without knowing the truth. The stakes had never been this high. Clara felt she was holding a match in a powder keg. "Clara! They're coming!" The woman's voice called out, rushing into the room as if time had slowed down. Clara turned to see her running from behind a stack of crates, leaning against the wall, breathless but alive. "Did you distract them?" Clara shouted, hope flaring in her chest, but the urgency of the moment drowned the sound of her voice. The woman shook her head, eyes wide with fear. "Aaron, he led them here. We have to move. Now." Clara felt the world narrow down to one singular focus. "But Paul. Where is he in all of this?" The question hung heavy in the air, uncertain, filled with every pain she had borne that night. They were caught in this whirlwind and it was spiraling further out of control. The woman grasped Clara's arm, pulling her toward one of the open doors that led to a narrow passage. "He's at the rendezvous point. We have to reach him before they do. That's our only chance." Clara's heart surged against her ribcage, spurred by fear of the unknown. They tore down the hallway, flashes of restless shadows slipping past her vision, but Clara's mind was locked on the hope that they could still save Paul. As they reached the end of the passage, Clara heard muffled voices emanating from the door they intended to open. Without even glancing back, intuition whispered at her to pause. "Wait." She pushed the woman back gently just as the door creaked open. It revealed a dimly lit meeting room brimming with tension. Two men in suits stood at the center, speaking in clipped tones. "We need that girl. She's the one who can lead us to the final pieces," one snapped, a serious edge in his voice. The other nodded, flipping through files that Clara could just glimpse. Their contents were beyond her understanding, filled with diagrams, dates, and names. "She won't take us to Paul willingly," the first man countered, a slow smirk spreading across his face. "We'll give her no option." Panic surged through Clara as she recognized the true danger. "We can't just wait for them to come after us," she whispered urgently to the woman. "We need to create a diversion and grab Paul." "Yes. Just wait for my signal," the woman whispered back as they readied themselves. With newfound determination, Clara yanked the heavy metal door wide, stepping boldly into the room. "You need to stop looking for me," she shouted, adrenaline lending strength to her voice. The men turned, wide-eyed, shock quickly morphing to realization. "Get her!" one yelled, lunging in Clara's direction just as Clara shoved the door with all her might. It slammed against the wall, creating a cacophony of sound. She and the woman darted out, adrenaline flooding their veins again. Their only goal was to run. "Go!" Clara yelled fiercely, grabbing the woman's hand as they sped down the hall. Instincts roared to life as they navigated the maze of corridors, through echoes and against stormy skies of uncertainty. They raced toward Paul's location, certain that with each stride, they were drawing nearer to the truth. But doubt was a fickle companion. What if they failed? What if they couldn't reach him in time? The end came when they reached a sprawling rooftop. A glimmer of red and blue flashing lights pierced the night, casting an eerie glow through the air as Clara spotted a figure standing at the edge. Paul. And in that moment, everything clicked into place. Paul held not just information, he held the power to end this all. The woman called out, "Paul! It's us!" Relief flooded through Clara, but just as she yelled, menacing figures began to emerge from the shadows below. Trapped again, something inside Clara snapped. "Step back!" she shouted, turning to face the incoming threats. Fear twisted in her gut, but even stronger was the fire of resolve. "We're done running." With unyielding strength, Clara reached down inside her, unlocking every ounce of courage, every fear turned determination. As the men rushed toward her, she sprang forward and took her stand. "You will not take him." In that blinding moment, she felt the chaos of everything around her collide. But beyond the brink of danger, as the confrontation began, Clara realized that no matter the weight that lay in front of them, she was ready to carry it all. She was ready to fight for the truth and to protect those who mattered most, and just like that, everything transformed. Clara, no longer just a waitress with a kind heart, became the catalyst of change, a warrior unafraid of the unseen dangers, and as hope sparked to life, a new chapter began. The outcome was uncertain, but the fight had only just begun. Now, whoever was watching, it was time to decide, would you step into the unknown, too? You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that are coming. Smash the like button now to show your support and keep this story alive. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about what happens next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is what makes this possible.